Hey there, brilliant people. So today I have another episode of the 5 Things playlist that I have started. And today I'm going to talk to you about the 5 things that I wish someone told me about emotional intelligence. So the first thing I wish someone told me about emotional intelligence is that it can be learnt. Just like any other form of intelligence, there are principles and that you can learn, and then skills that you need to practice. So it's like a code, if you like, but it can be cracked and you can learn it. So a lot of the talk around emotional intelligence, at least the way that I heard people talk about it, it was almost like, well, it's one of those things. It's almost like a gift. You're either born with it, you're either naturally very empathic or empathetic, or you're not, and that's just how it is. But it's just like any form of intelligence. Emotional intelligence can be learned. So the second thing that I wish someone had told me about emotional intelligence is that it is important to learn it, or if you already have some of it, it's important to get better at it. Because, so many studies have shown that our success is actually more dependent on our emotional intelligence than kind of like what we normally think of about intelligence. It's like, it doesn't matter how many facts that you have in your head, it's really about emotional intelligence. That is a bigger indicator of your success in life than almost anything else. So it's really worthwhile working on it. So the third thing that I wish someone had told me about emotional intelligence is that it's best to approach it with a whole brain. And what do I mean by that? I mean that, normal intelligence, that sort of doing crossword puzzles or being good at maths. Whereas sort of the other side of our brain, the right brain, whatever, that is more to do with emotional intelligence and intuition, actually. So, but like intuition, we're actually going to get better at it if we have this whole brain approach. Now, how do we do that with emotions? Well, with emotions, when our left brain understands that each of the different emotions are kind of like a signal from our subconscious mind to our conscious mind about what's really going on. And it's just telling us, like, so when we get angry, it means, okay, somebody's trodden on our boundaries, or we're not getting what we want. So we need to take that energy and use it to get what we want, constructively, preferably, of course. If we're bored, it means that, well, we've nearly completed that cycle. So that it's time to find a new project. So like each of the emotions is actually giving us information. And when your left brain actually kind of understands the emotional code, you can then deal with your emotions from a whole brain perspective. And that makes everything so much easier and certainly more effective in navigating around, human emotions. So at least that's something that's been really helpful for me in developing my emotional intelligence. The fourth thing that I wish someone had told me about emotional intelligence is that certainly there are many, many emotions that require our compassion. And, most of those emotions, though, are connected with when we're going through a hard time or someone else is going through a hard time. We need to be compassionate. We need to, do our best to be supportive. That's what emotional intelligence, that's a big part of emotional intelligence. But there is this other side of emotional intelligence. And, this other side is where a lot of the real energy comes from with emotional intelligence. And those emotions are the more positive emotions. They're the ones that are connected to joy and passion and inspiration and enthusiasm. And the thing is, most of the time when we think about emotional intelligence, we think about having empathy for other people. And that's really important, of course. But big part of emotional intelligence is actually also being able to share someone else's joy, be inspired by their inspiration. So that, because with this more sort of energized side of emotional intelligence, we can have a much more sort of mutual expansion, and that's just brilliant. So the fifth thing that I wish somebody had told me, which sort of leads on from the last point, is that generally in our society, we do see a lot of empathy, a lot of compassion. When people are in trouble, people rally around it, which is wonderful to see, that level of empathy and, concern. But because of that, it's almost like when somebody is experiencing joy, that's actually the harder side of emotional intelligence for a lot of us, because when somebody is in joy, it's so easy to slip into a little bit of jealousy, or why hasn't it happened for me? But when we're doing that, well, we're not actually being at our most emotionally intelligent. When somebody has had a huge win, the emotionally intelligent thing to do is to share in that joy and actually be inspired by it. And the more that we're able to do that, the more that we can therefore get a lift from their joy and experience more positive emotions for ourselves, and that has a really sort of good energy about it that can attract more good things to us. So rather than being, falling into little bits of jealousy or inadequacy, if we can use our emotional intelligence to actually practice joy, or at least, open ourselves up to it, so that when others around us experience joy, we can go for that ride with them. That's one of the best uses of our emotional intelligence, because it means that we can have that really sort of mutually expansive experience with them. It also means that we start to get around it, like brilliant people, we start to have those in our lives, because rather than maybe not reacting so positively when they're having fabulous things happen for them, we're actually able to support their brilliance, and of course they will then support our brilliance back. So when you work with emotional intelligence, having that kind of co-creative mutual expansion, it becomes a lot easier to create. And I just love that. So that's the 5 things I wish somebody had told me about emotional intelligence. And certainly if the more they showed me how to do that, I guess the sooner I would have got to have that expansion as well. So give yourself that expansion, work on your emotional intelligence, and until next time, remember that you're brilliant.